Many times we don't understand the law. Law for the People with Eric Cedillo is here to inform, educate, and answer your legal questions. Thank you for tuning in today. From the law offices of Eric Cedillo, located at 1725 Greenville Avenue in Dallas, Texas, here's your host, Eric Cedillo.
Hey guys, thank you so much for coming back with us, returning to us. We have our second wonderful guest this afternoon, Ms. Karla Garcia, who is running for DISD, Dallas Independent School District Trustee in District 4. Karla, thank you so much for coming out today. We really appreciate it. If we could, usually in these segments, we try to get into who our folks are. As you may have heard earlier, our audience is just kind of really varied from all over the world, quite honestly. But we're talking about Texas, mainly, and specifically here in Dallas. So you're running for DISD trustee. Maybe you could kind of give us a sense of what that composition looks like, what a trustee does, and then I'd love to talk about you. So tell us a little bit about what a trustee does.
Sure. So thank you for having me here today.
Absolutely.
And I'll start off, again, my name is Karla Garcia. So District 4 for DISD is Pleasant Grove, Balch Springs, and Seagoville, so Southeast Dallas. And I'm, tremendously excited to be part of this runoff election today, as of today. And so just a little bit background about myself is I'm born in Dallas. I'm raised in Pleasant Grove, so PG has been my home neighborhood and something that I'm very proud of. And the role of a trustee, very specifically, comes down to ultimately three functions. Okay. So the number one is you hire and fire a superintendent. The second is that you set the budget. And the third, you set policy priorities. So ultimately, a trustee has three main duties. And it comes down as for the 9 districts of DISD, ultimately comes down to a yes or no vote. Okay. But of course, my vision is to extend those 3 responsibilities of a trustee to something that's much more community-based and more fulfilling a community vision for DISD and Southeast Dallas together. Okay.
Actually, Jaime Resendez, who was the former trustee, used to work here with us here at the office. So it's some continuity in terms of, so I had a close-up view of what he did and how he did it. I think he's doing a wonderful job. Of course, he's gone on to the city council, recently elected the city council. So it's always great to see young people kind of moving up and doing their thing and really just flourishing. So we're really excited to have you and talk to you. Before we kind of get into platforms and other things that you have and talking about why you should be the trustee and kind of pleading your case, love to know, growing up in Pleasant Grove, I would imagine, you live with your folks, attending the schools, doing all that stuff. Why don't we start from the start? Where did you go to school and what did that kind of look like?
So I attended John W. Runyon and Edward Teich Elementary in Pleasant Grove. And the thing about Pleasant Grove and Southeast Dallas, just to give a picture and idea of our community, so it's pretty much a working class community. My father is a construction worker, scaffolding for the past 20, 30, 40 years. Yeah. My mother is a fast food worker at Taco Bell. And so, come from very humble beginnings. I am the firstborn daughter of Mexican immigrants from Guanajuato, Mexico. So I very much see myself carrying forth the dreams and aspirations that my parents were denied because of poverty and violence and different things in their home country. So proudly the daughter of immigrants, and I carry that sense of responsibility and moving forward and echándole ganas with everything that I do. So I had a pleasant experience in elementary school, and for middle school and high school, I attended Irma Rangel Young Women's Leadership School in South Dallas, and that was the first magnet all-girls school in the state of Texas. Yeah. So, and the reason why that's so special to me even more now is because Irma Rangel herself was a pioneer. She was the first Mexican-American woman elected to the Texas House back in, I think, the 1970s, 80s. But she was a first. She was Latina, just like me, daughter of immigrants. So her story and her legacy is now feeding into what I'm doing now a few years later. So it's thrilling to me in that regard. And I think, there's a lot of work to be done in Pleasant Grove, and it goes beyond our public schools, but public schools, it's where we're going to get the momentum going. And if we do not have great neighborhood schools, we will not have the neighborhoods that we could and the prosperity that we can. So Pleasant Grove is near and dear to me, and I know that there are a lot of things outside of the classroom that really affect what goes on inside of the classroom. So when we talk about infrastructure, when we talk about safety and crime and, job security, food insecurity, all these different things play into the ecosystem that is our neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And in Pleasant Grove and Balch Springs, the demographic is slightly different than the demographic in Seagoville.
Okay.
And so, I have essentially 3 major communities that I would be working on behalf of and serving. And so it's my responsibility. And as I have from the very beginning, day one of this campaign trail, is to intimately understand the people, the communities, their needs, their wants, their desires, and how can I be of service.
Yeah.
Carrying my own experiences and my own privileges too, and I recognize those now, coming into the space. So, hardworking family, and we just keep moving forward.
Let's talk about your parents. And
Yeah.
I have a tendency to do this when I bring people on, because I was incredibly influenced by my folks, especially my mom. In terms of what she did and the struggles that she went through to kind of do for us what of course wasn't able to do for her kind of growing up, and that's get an education and move us forward. And she just stressed that so many times. Guanajuato, both of your parents, did they meet there? Or they meet here in the States?
No, they met. So my father immigrated to this country when he was 14 years old.
Okay.
And he came with his older brothers and younger brothers. So at one point in time in my family's history, I had every single one of my paternal and maternal uncles in the United States. They were migrant farm workers and took any odd job that an undocumented immigrant at the time
Where
could
were
take.
they at? Were they generally in a...
All over the place. So
All
they
over?
followed the work.
Right.
And the chain migration was they were always together.
Yeah.
And my dad tells stories of, I was in Chicago, I was in Indiana, I was picking tomatoes in California, I was in Atlanta, North Carolina.
Yeah.
So all my family was here, but ultimately it was only my father who decided to stay from all his brothers and my mother's brothers. And so he stayed, and he would work for a few years and then send money back home to sustain his mother and other family members. And ultimately, on one of those trips, I don't know how many years after he first started coming, met my mom.
Yeah.
And the decision was that my mom knew that I would not be afforded opportunities, first of all, because I was a woman, and second, because my family is still pretty much living in poverty. And my father wanted something better, my mother wanted something better, and ultimately settled in the United States.
Yeah.
And that was in Dallas, happenstance. It was supposed to be Chicago, and it happened to be Dallas because it's closer to the border, and we could visit family and friends more often. So I was born, and I am the firstborn American in my entire generation. So I am a lot of proud first in that regard, but
absolutely.
that's my parents.
Brothers and sisters? Do you have other brothers?
Younger
and
brother, younger sister, proudly graduates of DISD as well. My sister graduated from Irma Rangel as well. So we've got 2 Irma Rangel grads now, an alum, and I know that across our neighborhood, that sisterhood network is growing, and across the state of Texas too. So excited to have them on board and engaged in the work that we're doing right now.
Are they in school? They both graduated high school?
Yes. So my brother did not go on to pursue a college education, but he did go on to pursue a career training, and it's something that he really enjoys. And actually, I'll talk about it later on my platform. But within my own household, I have a college education, brother career training, and my sister is now a sophomore at college in San Antonio. So within our own same household, you can see what education means to you, what it if it's post-secondary, and what it meeting the needs for a student's vision of success, however that may be, whether it's college, career, technical training. There has got to be something for every student. So.
And for you, you went to college,
Yes.
graduated from college. What prompted you to go? What kind of was the accelerator that kind of made that happen for you?
Yeah, so my parents came to this country with the very strong belief that an education was going to give me the means to have the self-agency and the confidence and the means to take care of myself and my own family, and ultimately take care of them as well. That's my vision.
Yeah.
And so education was always, like, mija, échale ganas en la escuela. La escuela was always the place where you knew that you would harvest and reap rewards.
Right.
And so that's what I did throughout school, and now had the great fortune of attending the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, so 1,500 miles away from home.
Yeah.
I'm a first-gen student, didn't know a single soul in North Carolina. But those are the challenges that I think ultimately, and it very intimately inform, the challenges that I had are going to inform the policy ideas and initiatives that I propose for the school board, because I understand intimately what it's like to be a student whose household income is less than an annual tuition at a university. So financial aid, admission, the right counseling, what major, what minor, study abroad. I mean, all these different things are questions that as a first generation college student, I didn't necessarily have a family member or a parent to ask. And thankfully, UNC had great resources where I could receive that help, but there's nothing like having that personal connection peer-to-peer. So I'd love to see more, and again, I'll talk about it later in my platform, but ultimately we need to prepare our students from graduating from DISD to have the self-agency to advocate for themselves once they reach college campus, because it doesn't stop when you graduate high school. There's college, and when we talk about enrollment, persistence, completion, our communities, our black and brown students are being left behind, and there are huge gaps. So those are the things that I want to address. And looping back to my parents, but when my dad came to the U.S. At 14, at 16, he was recruited to work in Cary, North Carolina, and he was working, laying bricks and doing just other jobs at a power plant in North Carolina for Duke Energy. And it so happens that I get into UNC, I'm admitted, orientation is happening, we're driving up to campus, and my dad starts recognizing some things. He's like, oh, I didn't tell you this ever, but I was in North Carolina, I was in Cary, which is about 20 minutes from Chapel Hill. We're driving up, and he goes, I kind of recognize this. And then it hits him that the power plant that we were passing by in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, was where he was working at the age of 16. Right. And so now, 38 years later, his daughter, am graduating from this top tier university with a degree that's going to enable me to do things in life. And to me, if that's not the immigrant American dream story, then I don't know what is.
Absolutely.
And so here I am today, just connecting all the dots and hoping that we can make it possible for more students.
What prompted you to go to UNC? It's far away. It is a...
Yeah. So I knew college was going to be expensive, and the only way that I thought I could afford to pay for college was if somebody did that for me. And I knew the military did that for students. And I was genuinely interested in serving. If you take a look at my yearbook, my senior yearbook, it says, 10 years from now, I hope to be an officer in the U.S. Navy. I was genuinely interested in giving back to this country that had given us and my family so much. And I had a ROTC scholarship essentially lined up at Texas A&M University, and was interested in the Naval and Coast Guard academies for a little while, and then decided I didn't want to go there necessarily. And then...
Nobody wants to go to Texas A&M.
Yeah, no, it's a great place. I was super excited, and then my counselor says, Mija, I think you're limiting yourself by not looking into other schools. But now the problem was for me is that I never considered myself to be a student with the grades or the rigor or the resume to be admitted to schools like Syracuse, UNC, Duke, Notre Dame, and others that were on this list. Right. And of the schools on that list, of the 10 schools, I think only UNC, and I have no idea why, UNC caught my eye. Yeah. And I applied just to not make my counselor upset with me. So I apply, I let it be. There's no way I can get into UNC. That's a big school. It's expensive. And next thing you know, I'm admitted. Out-of-state tuition, though, is ridiculously expensive. It's about 3 times as expensive as in-state tuition. And it's more than my combined household income. So between my financial aid at UNC and then applying to 98 scholarships my senior year, of which I think I only received 18, but even then that's a lot. Right. Combined with those third-party scholarships, I was able to graduate UNC debt-free. Wow. So that's a story that a lot of undergraduate students today, or college students in general, aren't able to say. Right. And that it should not have been that hard to find the college that I could have attended, and then made sure I was able to finance it. So lots of little systemic things that need to be addressed along the way. And they all start, again, we can make a big start at DISD.
Well, it's incredible. You're relatively young, and to recognize those things and those markers and those milestones is just amazing. So what prompted you to run for trustee? Yeah.
The why question. Yeah. And it's the one that keeps me running every single day, every single hour, down to the second, because this is tiring, it's exhausting. Yeah. But the why is because I see myself in students, the students of DISD. I was one of those students. And I know that without the support and the people that I had around me, I would not be here today. And I recognize that. And if I can be that person for our students today, and dedicate myself as was done to me,
Yeah.
and see the difference that it made in my life and do it for other students. That's the why. This school district is the demographic of this school district reflects my own lived experiences, and the why comes down to my neighbors, my friends, the students in my own neighborhood across the ISD, the parents like my parents, and it's not just about the first generation students or the low income students, but I mean genuinely we have got to harvest the potential that we have in DISD.
Yeah.
To have the communities that we could have, to have thriving communities. And I say this all the time, but I do not believe the city of Dallas will truly thrive if our local communities are falling behind.
no
And
doubt.
Southeast Dallas is one of those, and public education is where we're going to get hit the ground running.
People don't realize, and especially if you're not from Texas, if you're not from the Dallas area, 40% Latino in terms of overall demographic composition. But our schools are at about 94, 95% faces of color, African American and Latino, 72 to 74% Latino. So it is incredible. I'm kind of admiring from afar in terms of having someone who's young, who's Latina, who has the opportunity to kind of realize, what it is they can do and the incredible impact that they can have on those who are coming right after you.
That's right.
So it's been a big shift, I went to Dallas schools a long time ago, and fortunately I have the opportunity to be in the schools, and I see the faces, and of course they're looking up to folks like you, to see what happens next, how they can make it. So just incredibly proud that you're running, and so thankful that you can realize it at a relatively young age and be able to kind of continue that. So let us, if we can, talk a little bit about what it is you see in terms of what you can do. Not only the why and the want, but there is no doubt that I think everybody kind of listening to you kind of gains an understanding of how thoughtful you are as a person. I know it wouldn't just be a situation where I want to run, because what do you think you can do to kind of to assist and kind of give us the composition? What is it? You mentioned the number of trustees, superintendent responsibility, bringing on the right superintendent, which quite honestly right now I think we have a wonderful one. It's my personal opinion. But tell us what you think you might be able to do as a trustee in terms of influencing that board and what happens next.
Yeah. So I think it starts with realizing how many of our school board trustees are actually DISD graduates.
Right.
And so I believe I'd be one of two or one of three
Wow.
in the 9 seats. In my very fairly recent experience in DISD, what I want to do is to call out and attentively and thoughtfully and with a plan how to address things that sometimes go beyond our heads when we talk about policy. So
Yeah.
it's really easy to bring up data points or to talk about statistics and progress, but I think ultimately the way that I see it is I was one and am one of those statistics of those students. And so to me, there's a very human touch that I want to bring to what, first of all, public elected office is and can do, and also the way that I talk about that on the school board. So
Yeah.
I want families to understand, including my own, that your elected school board, your democratically elected school board, is here to serve you. And I want students to see themselves being served, and parents and teachers seeing themselves served by the people that their communities have elected and entrusted to take care of them. So, honing back on the why, but the why also, it's taking care of my own. It's taking care of Pleasant Grove. It's taking care of Cedillo, Botch Springs, students like me, families like me. And me isn't just my demographic labels, right? It's not just Latinos. It's not just low-income families. It's not just first generation or immigrant families. But it is a collective community when I say me and stuff. And so I want to be an advocate that talks about the things that affect us more than star scores and the number of any given number of anything.
Yeah.
So giving more of the human and real lived experiences of our students into our public education experience.
We have here in Dallas, of course, City Council 14-1 set up. We've got 9 trustees in DISD that represent their district. And, I have an opportunity to talk to some of the trustees, kind of coming on the show and doing some other things. And I'm always interested in kind of that your constituency, which is your area, and the overall outlay. 'Cause sometimes, we're fighting for, the schools in our district. We, of course, want to take care of the schools in our district, the feeder patterns that occur there, and unfortunately, sometimes maybe to the detriment to others, because there's a limited amount of monies. How do you kind of feel about that in terms of your obligation, one, to your area, and of course, towards the overall DISD structure?
Yeah. So alarming to me is that if you take a look at those numbers, and when you look at the very key benchmark indicators of student achievement and student growth and success, there's a lot of work to do in District 4. So if you look at especially college enrollment and financial aid completion and all these different metrics, our high schools are struggling and there's a lot of work to be done.
Right.
So my high schools are Spruce, Samuel, and Seagoville High School. And I'll preface with, when this campaign started, since day one, we have been very intentional about asking people at the door, what matters to you and why? What do you want to see? I cannot come in expecting to know better than everyone else and to have all the right decisions in my head right now. And so we're taking the time to sit down and hearing concerns. And it's thrilling for me, and as sad as it is as well, that we have folks who will say, no one has ever asked me what I care about in public education, what I care about in our schools and in the classroom. But as soon as you raise the question, and in their language, which, by the way, language barrier is a huge reason why our community members don't engage with the public school system. Yeah. And when I can ask that question in their language, you just open a box of possibilities of what could be of our schools if we engaged our families the way that they want to be and could be. And so I know it's all of DISD, and yes, I mean, every single student we're here to serve every single student, but there are very dire needs in District 4, and I have talked extensively to community members and elected officials of those communities, and it's going to take us working together to address the urgent needs that District 4 has. Southeast Dallas, again, has often felt more like a stepchild to the city of Dallas, and so it's time we get the attention and the resources that we deserve.
I'd be remiss if I didn't kind of engage in this. You'd mentioned you've had the opportunity to talk and talk with the potential constituency and others. What is it they're looking for? What is it they're wanting? What is it they may feel a little shortchanged about?
Yeah. So I'll get questions at the door of everything from, what are you going to do about the roads? What are you going to do about these buildings? What are you going to do about crime?
I want to do everything.
Right. So that tells me a lot, right? That says a lot about what concerns that people are having. But when it comes to the public schools, I think, I can get as versed as I want on policy and initiatives and talk to people. The problem is that oftentimes that goes over people's heads because the concerns at the door are as basic as the toilets aren't flushing, there's never soap at the bathrooms, kids are getting sick, the buses aren't running on time. So it's, we can sit and debate with higher level curriculum or policy decisions and budget, but there were very basic needs that need to be met first for students and parents to feel like they're being taken care of. And so I think one of the biggest things that I want to do is get to that low-hanging fruit as soon as possible and introduce along the way the higher, more complicated issues.
I've got 4 kids, 2 of them graduated a while back, one from Woodrow, one from TAG. Got one at Woodrow. I've got another that's about to start Long over here in East Dallas. DISD is incredibly important to me, not only for my children, but for, just like you're saying, the overall where we go. And for me, of course, Latinos are a very important, underrepresented part of our society, and certainly in Dallas. I personally have been following DISD for a little while. I've been on the advisory board, business advisory board of the superintendent. Personally, I think he's doing a really good job. I think DISD has, and it isn't overnight, but has become, kind of they're putting it up there in terms of what we should be doing across the state. And there's no doubt that that's kind of a reality down in Austin and in other places. How do you feel DISD has been doing over the last few years? Where do you think we can do better? What are some of the things that you kind of bring as a trustee, which, in all honesty, is a huge responsibility, as you kind of mentioned, those 3 prongs of what a trustee does. But how do you feel about the state of DISD currently?
Yeah, I'm proud of DISD. I think oftentimes DISD has carried a reputation that's not very favorable. in my community especially, where charter schools have really picked up over the last few years, oftentimes it can feel to some of my parents at the door that, oh, DISD, that's never going to fix itself, or we've tried and we lost trust in DISD. Yeah. So as trustee, one of my biggest, I would have defined my success by, did we restore this trust in parents and community members and students themselves that DISD is the place where they can receive a great education. And then second of all, I think too is DISD taking care of its local communities by taking care of its schools. Yeah. So I see it, larger vision of what DISD can mean for our communities. And then extending it further to the work that needs to be done in DISD with early childhood education and the middle school space and the high school space. I mean, we cannot, what is the purpose of graduating our students if they are not equipped to do something after high school? And again, that something can be college, career, technical, vocational, military, but there has got to be something for you. And the city of Dallas has got great opportunities all across the board. And what often felt to me growing up in Pleasant Grove was that here is this shiny North Dallas city, and people think of Dallas and they think Jerry's World, but we live right here too, and we don't experience that, and we're struggling. And I want our students to be able to take advantage of the plentiful opportunities that we already have in this city. And it's the lack of the credentials, it's the lack of maybe the social networks and social capital to access those things as other students have. And how do we build more of that so that DISD and the success of Dallas are taken together? DISD has definitely proven that with the right initiatives and the strategic leadership, it can really make a big difference. And so I see myself as wanting to continue those initiatives and wanting to continue the things that have proven very successful for our students, because the urgency and the need is here. And I will never debate, we have to get it right, and we have to get it right soon. And so that's the sense of urgency that I bring to the table. I think too, just the asset of who I am and the things that my own experiences, and yes, they're new and they're young, but that's an asset to the school board. Absolutely. And that's an asset for the city of Dallas. I myself am navigating that space, that workforce, and that space at the moment right now. So I think it all ties together, and I'm proud of DISD. I want to restore the trust in DISD. And that would have defined success for me. Totally agree with you. We need an infusion of youth. We need that slightly different perspective, and we need to continue on with that. It's been a real pleasure. I can't believe the time has flown so quickly. Karla, we're in the middle of early voting. If you could just kind of give the listeners a sense of when the election day is, when they can vote, when the end of early voting is, just gives everybody here locally, what the time frame and what that looks like. Yeah, so early voting is taking place now up until next Tuesday, June 4th. The closest early voting location for District 4 residents is the Pleasant Grove Eastfield campus on 802 South Buckner. Polls are open now until Saturday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., on Sunday from 1 to 6 p.m., and next Monday and Tuesday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And of course, early voting, you can vote at any early voting location in Dallas, but District 4 residents, just be mindful, it's only the Pleasant Grove Eastfield campus this time around. And if people want more information about you in particular, you have a website, you have somewhere they can go to find that information? Yes, website is www.karlagarcia4disd.com, all spelled out, and our Instagram handles are my name, Karla, Karla, number 4, DISD, on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Okay. Well, Karla, thank you so much for coming out today. It was a real pleasure getting to know you a little bit more, and I'm sure our listeners are thinking the same thing. So good luck with your election. And guys, you come back with us. We'll have our final guest coming on, Paula Blackman, who's running for City Council here in District 9. So come back in about 2 minutes. Thank you so much. The law offices of Eric Cedillo, a professional corporation, a firm that handles legal matters in personal injury, auto and truck accidents, wrongful death, on-the-job injuries, criminal felony and misdemeanor, family law, divorce, and child custody. The law offices of Eric Cedillo, located at 1725 Greenville Avenue in Dallas at 214-740-1628. That's 214-740-1628. Find them on the web at cedillolaw.com. That's cedillolaw.com.